Hello, good afternoon. I'm joined today by Sean Hemming-Metcalf from InventoryBase. Hello, Sean. How are you doing?
I'm really well, David. Thanks for having me on today.
It's an absolute pleasure. Sean, we're going to cover a very important subject that I think, as an agent, I think not enough people are concentrating on. And obviously, we know InventoryBase and we know the importance of having an inventory report in place. But today we're going to talk about the fitness for human habitation changes that came into effect in 2019, but one of the best kept secrets in the industry. So give us a bit of background behind that.
Yeah, I think it is. Well, so the background is that in 2018, the Fitness of Human Habitation Act was enacted, and it came into force in 2019, about March time. And the whole point about it is to get rental properties up to a safe and usable spec, because there's been so many properties that have been rented out that are just basically not safe. They're not fit for someone to be in there, and that could be a multitude of things. Not because of heat, maybe they haven't got the right kind of sanitary options, bathrooms, showers, toilets, etc. And it's to kind of even the playing field, as it were, in the rentals, so that when people are coming into the private rented sector, they can expect the similar kind of rental stock and safety that they would expect if they bought their own home, or they were living in the social sector and any other kind of property related sector. And it's been brought in to make sure that tenants are safe, but it also then penalises landlords and agents who don't make their property safe. So it gives the tenant the ability to take the landlord to court. The court can then force the landlord to make changes, to upgrade the property to make it safe, and also make them pay compensation. So there's a lot riding on it in regards to potential penalties if the landlord and managing agent don't bring the property up to a livable standard.
So these are sometimes the punitive measures that are enacted around compliance and reports and so on, make the change happen, because it's that big hammer that comes down that forces people to do it. But rather than being a punitive step, agents and landlords would be best advised to embrace this, because in actual fact, it will make their property a better standard, which in turn is going to lead to them having a better quality of tenant. And just for the lifetime of that tenancy, it's probably going to bring your maintenance costs down if you're on your game from day one. So exactly. There are benefits, aren't there?
Huge benefits. I mean, for me, it shouldn't be about the threat of the court action like you just mentioned. It should be about keeping the tenant safe, keeping the void times as low as possible, because that costs money at the end of the day, and no one wants to spend out, especially at the moment. There's enough legislation, enough costs happening in the private rented sector without actually adding to them. And it also helps eliminate any potential action from the councils, from the courts, to take landlords to court if they don't deal with the property. To me, it's a really good tool. It's 29 steps, as it were, to better housing, to safer housing for tenants. So that, to me, makes sense on many levels. It means then the rental stock in the PRS, the standard goes up, which means landlords can then charge more because the property is in better condition, so more tenants want it, so therefore you can charge a better premium. You're probably likely to get better tenants because they appreciate the fact that they've got a really nice property that's been well cared for, well maintained, safe for them, so they'll feel that they want to stay longer. So that reduces your void period. And certainly from an agent point of view, if they're using these 29 key risk assessment steps when they're taking on property, they can then be saying to landlord, yeah, we want to take your property on, but you need to get some things sorted out first.
I think we referred to it off air as an the equivalent of an MOT or a health check for the property. I think that's so important, because how many times has an agent taken something on that in their heart of hearts they know is substandard, or something's going to go wrong, and having almost like a unified, universal platform that gives you a set 29 steps there, if you like, areas and criteria that you need to adhere to. I think those, and it's really comprehensive. I'm just looking through it now. It covers all the usual suspects that crop up very early on in a tenancy: mold and damp, excess cold, so if it's not sort of insulated properly, excess heat, if it's too hot, asbestos, biocides, carbon monoxide. It's all the usual nasties that you see in there. But it then goes on to sort of cover the crowding and space, so the number of people you're likely to be able to occupy every room or every property, lighting, noise, pest control, you name it. This is fully comprehensive, isn't it?
It is. It's like it's almost like a full property body scan, for want of a better phrase. It just takes into account everything. But to me, that's brilliant, because then if you can hit every single marker on those 29 risks, so you know the property is warm when it's meant to be, you know, during the winter, it's cool during the summer, when, especially now with climate change, you know, we're getting varying weather degrees in regards to heat and cold. And, you know, properties sometimes don't cope very well with that. I've been in properties myself, you know, doing inventories where my breath is seen in the property and it's colder in the property than it is outside the property. So there's something fundamentally wrong. And then you're expecting someone to live in that and then pay for that, and also expect them not to complain. So, you know, if you've got all of these kind of sections, all these areas all sorted and done, and everything's functioning properly, everything is up to code, everything has got its right certificates, etc., then you shouldn't have those complaints. You wouldn't be having those kind of conversations, or if you do, they're probably minor. They're minor maintenance, which then reduces the cost of the landlord. So agents might then say, well, then maybe I'm not making so much money in regards to the maintenance side of things, but then you could possibly then up your rent, your management fee, because your stock is so well maintained, because it is such good quality. So you can justify the costs in that regard.
And there's nothing wrong with having standards, is there, really?
No,
Make your
definitely
life
not.
easier, will make in the long run, it's going to make life easier for the landlords as well.
Yeah, especially because now we're living, you think about it, we're now not just living in a property, we are working in a property. So many more people are working from home. Many poor people aren't going away from holiday. So effectively, the property is becoming not just the hub of the home, it is the hub of life. So if you're going to be spending 24 hours a day, you know, you're not going out to work, you're literally just going from one room to the other, then, you know, you're going to want it to do everything that you need it to do. And if, as a tenant, you want a good property and you want that safety element and you want it fully functioning and fully certificated, then you're going to expect to pay more, but you don't mind that if it's, you know, at the right kind of quality level.
So Sean, that's the problem, if you like. So the solution, or the actual setup to provide these reports and to deliver to the landlord what they need. Take us through how InventoryBase help with that.
Well, InventoryBase, as you know, we've been around for quite a while, over 9 years now. And I think, you know, certainly from my point of view, we're setting the standard when it comes to property reports, but also the software, the templates, the tools behind being able to compile the reports. So what we've done is we've built a template into the InventoryBase system so that it has, well, you've actually got two choices. You've got a very detailed one, which goes more into belt and braces, more detailed depending on, you know, what kind of level you want to work at, or a more of a risk-based one where your low levels, your medium and your high levels, so that it's much easier for, you know, most landlords if they want to complete, agents if they want to complete, or outsource to qualified providers. And it's literally the 29 steps. Each one has a question, you know, it tells you what the 29 steps are. So it could be excess cold. So this means about exposure to suboptimal indoor temperatures. In fact, is that, you know, your property should be warmer inside than it should be outside, in the same way as it would be for heat as well. And it basically then say, okay, you've got that as a barometer. So, you know, what's the risk? What's the likelihood of it being too cold, too hot, bearing in mind what options you've got available. So for argument's sake, if it's too cold, is the boiler, is it working? Is there heating? Is it electric? Are they working? Have they been maintained? You know, so things that you can do to bring up to the temperature to, you know, a good standard so that, you know, people feel comfortable. And similarly, you know, if it's hot, you know, can you open the windows? Have you got locks on the windows? Do they have keys? The amount of properties I come across, all the windows are locked, no keys. So how are you going to open them? How can you ventilate? How can I get out if there's a problem?
And it's true that those calls that landlords and agents get, particularly during the winter from tenants, where the complaint is, I've got mold in my property, and it's usually due to lack of ventilation. They're unable to get fresh air into the property, the windows don't open, they've got the heating on full blast, sometimes they're even drying clothes on the radiator. It's a nightmare waiting to happen.
It is, yeah. And some of that is actually tenant-led in as much as, you shouldn't be drying clothes in a property and not ventilating correctly. You should be using other alternatives or using the extractor fans if they're supplied. But equally, then a tenant will say, well, if I've got no extractor fan, if I've got no key to open the window and I haven't got anywhere else to dry, my clothes outside, where else am I going to put them? So what you're looking to use this particular risk assessment is to mitigate those potential arguments and mitigate down the risk level so that, you won't be having those kind of conversations. So they have the ability to open the doors or secure them. They have the ability to ventilate the property. They have the ability to wash and clean themselves, their clothes, prepare their food, have the right kind of bins to stop pests coming around the property, around the bin area and causing problems in those kinds of things. Simple things like having the right number of bins, recycling bin, food bin, waste bin, and a normal waste bin, and that they're regularly collected and they're put somewhere so that it's safe and that the area is kept clean. They're not particularly difficult things to do, but sometimes I think, we forget about them. But that's the whole point of this risk assessment. We clearly set those 29 areas out. And the idea is then that the person carrying out the report will go through each one and go, okay, well, what's the problem? Is there a problem? If there's no, it's a low risk. But you also take the evidence as well. So should you have a conversation maybe at the end of the tenancy, section 21 as it stands at the moment is waiting to be issued, and then there's kind of complaints about the quality of the property, there's issues, there's maintenance not being done, things are broken, etc. You've got the body of evidence over and above just the inventory and the checkout to showcase that actually, no, we've taken these steps, we've done this maintenance, we've put these things in place, we've supplied the keys to the windows, we've refurbished,
and it's a proactive step. It's not
exactly,
it's not reactive. So in the eyes of any sort of court process, you're a diligent landlord, you're a diligent agent, you've gone out of your way to solve these problems before the tenancy started. Doing it on the back foot reactively is often frowned upon, and I think you get a much better result this way.
And it's much more difficult to actually do anything about it once the tenant's in situ. And then, of course, if they aren't dealt with beforehand, because the whole point is you should really be doing a fitness for human habitation assessment or a Homes Act, depends which way you want to look at it, at the very beginning before the property's let. So then what do I need to fix? What do I need to change or maintain? Or what might be a potential problem going forward that maybe I can't do anything about now, but I can put things into plan, maybe planned maintenance. So again, that's another potential option for the letting agent and also the landlord. So by the time you get to inventory, all of the issues should be fixed, all the safety certificates should be in place, so that when the tenant goes in, if there's going to be any complaints or any questions or any issues, they're going to be minor. But what we find is the tenant gets in and you end up with a long list of this is wrong, that's not working, that's not fixed, I'm too cold, I'm too hot, I haven't got this, I haven't got that. And then, like you said, everybody's having to react to those.
It's a fact. It's harder to get work done with a tenant in a property than it is in a tenancy.
Yeah, it is very much right. And especially, I think the last 18 months have taught us anything is that, when we have these kind of issues with the pandemic and we're still in it and there's always a likelihood we'll have another lockdown at some point, trying to manage the property, trying to manage the tenant and their expectations and all the health and safety side of things. There's going to be an expectation from, certainly I would imagine, from the courts and from the governing bodies will say, well, look, we've had 18 months, we knew what the issues are, we should have had them all fixed now. So realistically, you don't really have any excuse going forward because you should have planned all this, because we've learned so much in the last 18 months. And that's why, with InventoryBase software, it's so useful because you can download the software, you can put it onto any kind of device, you can walk around the property and go, right, okay, what do I need to look at? Well, it's all listed. What do I need to risk assess? Well, you've got the options, you've got drop down, low, medium or high. If it's medium or high, I need to do something. And then what do I need to do? I create an action, I tell a maintenance guy, I take a picture, I've got my evidence. So it's quite a simple process. The key thing is just getting it in as part and parcel of the tenancy process as you start building towards the tenant going in, i.e. the paperwork, the referencing, the right to rent, and then before the inventory, the fitness for human habitation, and the inventory, then the check-in, and then the tenant walks in.
So I've seen a copy of this report, and it's extremely comprehensive, and it it hits the spot exactly because it explains each criteria. You've got photos in there. It's really clear as to whether or not it's low, medium, high, and what needs to be done, which is absolutely superb. So obviously InventoryBase's details are on Kerfuffle, and that's where people are going to find you.
It is. Yeah.
It is. But in terms of onboarding them, because this would be useful for inventory clerks, this is great for agents. It's even good for landlords themselves. So
Full spectrum, yeah.
You've got the full spectrum of different clientele that may want to access your services. How easy is it to onboard with you guys? What's the process?
Onboarding is extremely easy. They can literally sign up for a free trial on the inventorybase.co.uk website, create a free trial, get to play with the software, and then one of the sales teams will call up and we'll go through the software, explain all the different steps you need to take to be able to compile the report, and just give you the full functionality of the system. We can keep the report on the system because it gives you a booking system, calendar, can help you remind, you can share the report, you can sign the report, you've got share history, etc. So everything is there. So the onboarding side is very, very simple. And we've also got guides for using the template, and you've also got me as well. I train and clerks as part of the InventoryBase Academy. I'm the one who writes a lot of these templates. I write a lot of the blogs and the guidance, etc. I've also got a risk assessment background in my previous role, so I understand it, and I understand it from the property point of view. So I can literally walk anybody through the process. And the key thing with the way the government have done this, because you've got HHSRS, which is the health and safety rating system, which is normally employed by the council's environmental health, but that's been re-looked at the moment because it's quite complicated. It's got a lot of algorithms, it's got a lot of like complicated formulas behind it, and what they want is landlords and agents and clerks that should be able to go into the property and actually pick up a risk assessment and be able to use it with common sense. At the end of the day, you're not expected to be an environmental health officer with 50 odd years experience.
It's standardized and it's easy to access.
So your eyes should be able to pick that up and go, well, that makes common sense. And that's why I've designed it so that it kind of gives you the understanding, tells you what you're looking for, and then said, okay, well, how do you assess this, and then work your way through. And it's literally just as simple as that.
Fantastic. Well, that's a very refreshing take on compliance and reporting. And it's good to know that you come as part of the package, because you've got this fantastic background of actually sort of doing it at the coalface for many years, and the potential challenges that agents will come up against and how to overcome them. And I think in this case, you are forewarned is forearmed. You're going in there, and you know from day one that this property is going to be a better and easier property to manage, and the relationship between landlord and tenant and agent is going to be a lot more harmonious as a result of it.
Yeah, and that, when you think about it, is the end goal, because landlords want tenants in their property. They want good quality tenants. Tenants want good quality property. Managing agents want great landlords, great tenants. We're all kind of like vying for the same kind of end goal, as it were. So to me, it makes sense to use these tools because they're there. The Homes Act is there. Use it, not because you've worried you're going to get fined, but use it so that you've got the best property. You can charge the best amount for that property each and every month without any void periods. And then you've got happy and contented tenants. I mean, just to throw a quick figure in there, £27.1 billion was paid by tenants between 20 and 21. And yet, on average, landlords spent about £370 per property on maintenance.
Yeah.
It's a huge disparity. And if you look at what's happening legislation-wise in regards to, Property Mark today, are calling for a housing court. Yes. If we get that kind of structure, the housing court will actually hold agents and landlords to more account than they are already. So why give them the ammunition when you can so easily sort this out right at the beginning, and then that carries all the way through, not just the first tenancy, but every single tenancy.
100%. I think if you look at the way that legislative changes have been brought upon the industry, it feels like we've had one blow after another. But if you put it together, it shouldn't be seen as a blow. We're taking care of business that should have been sorted out years ago. People are paying a very decent whack of rent. They are, you know, they deserve to live in a space that is fit for purpose, fit for their family, exactly as we would want to at home. There's no reason at all why rented properties, particularly in the private rented sector, should be seen as substandard.
Yeah, exactly that. And the other thing that landlords always got to think about is with the rise of the change in the market, you know, we've got the buyer to let, where we've got big corporates, Lloyd's, other big you know, companies going into purpose-built rental properties. You know, they're going to be held to a very high account in regards to standards. So if they're going to meet those standards, but other landlords and other agents aren't, then, you know, there's a good likelihood that there obviously people like Lloyd's will take a bigger cut of the PRS.
Yeah,
that's natural, because people will naturally gravitate towards that. So, you know, in order to kind of keep that side of the business going, to, you know, keep landlords, you know, getting that money in and property rented, and the rental, you know, money coming in each month, it makes sense to, you know, work with these kind of structures, work with these kind of risk assessments, so that you're still, you know, in the game, as it were, rather than being pushed out because all the corporates are now in there, because they will adhere to those standards, because they are held to a higher account, and because they've got bigger pockets, they're more likely to get fined more. So of course they're not going to risk it, because they are risk adverse just by their very nature. Yeah,
I think as the very bottom line, better standard of property normally means better standard of tenant, because you're attracting your rents are going to be higher, and therefore the people that can afford to rent those are normally of a certain standing as well. So everything sort of follows, doesn't it?
It does, exactly that. And you, in a way, we shouldn't really kind of expect anything else. The same as anything. You know, if I go and buy a car, I expect a good quality car for the amount that I'm paying for it. I expect, you know, good quality furniture. Or if I'm going to eat out, I expect my meal to be really nice and, you know, reflect the amount of money I pay. Why is it any different to how we live? Especially the fact is, like I said, we're spending so much time in the property now with working from home and everything else. Then you know, the standards need to be so much more.
Sian, thank you very much for covering that with us today. All of InventoryBase's details can be found at kerfuffle.com. We look forward to talking to you again.
Lovely, thank you.
Bye.